at Cal State Fullerton since 2001, and I've been the chair since 2007, which is crazy. I think I'm the longest chair at Cal State Fullerton. Nobody usually likes this job, but here I am doing it for a really long time. I was at Cal Poly Pomona for 3 years before that, and in all of that time, I have been supervising, working out in the schools, doing a lot of professional development, teacher support, getting to go see interns, getting invited by you guys to see a cool lesson or a cool activity you're doing, and I absolutely love that. I want to continue to always be in the classroom. I think I'm in the classroom at least once a week pre-pandemic time period, and I have really special relationships with Compton Unified, Montebello Unified, Anaheim Union High School District, and Placentia or Belinda. Those are some of my favorites that I've worked with. I am also the one that leads the study abroads, and a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, our study abroad students get to practice, and study abroad was just put off through summer of next year. So we would be looking at going to Germany in January of 2022. That sounds really far away, but as you know, it'll go quickly. And then hopefully Rwanda to work in village schools in May of 2022. So if you're still a Cal State Fullerton student, then we would love to have you join us on one of those cool practice trips. So today we're going to be talking about active engagement, and these strategies can be done virtually with a little creativity, or also when you get to go back face to face in the classroom. And we were just going to set up some breakout rooms, but I think it might be cool to have us all share ideas too. I don't know if that makes you a little bit more quiet and nervous about sharing in a larger group, but I hope that this will be more like a workshop, and you'll join me by sharing some ideas, asking questions, exploring ways that we can use this technology. So I thought this quote was kind of cool, that technology is really just a tool. So in terms of getting kids working together and motivating them, the teacher is the most important. So I want you to remember that as we talk about these strategies, and it's the way that we teach and the way that we can engage them in their learning. I asked my little niece the other day how school was going as she's on Zoom all day. And this kid loves school. And she said, long, and she threw her head back. And I thought to myself, if we weren't in an online environment, that kid never would have replied long to me, because actually the day is shorter when we're in this pandemic phase of life. And so she just felt like her classroom was long, and probably meaning that it's harder to be engaged. So today we know that students can be very overwhelmed in the current environment that we're in. And oopsies. Sorry about that. Where did it just go? Here we go. Sorry. So our goal today is not for me to overwhelm you, but for us to really keep it simple. So the ideas that I'm going to share are so simple and really easy, and you can implement them right away. And also, I want us to create routines. So when you hear of a strategy today, maybe one that you have already used or learned about, but you haven't implemented, I want you to really be thinking strategically. How could I use this very simple strategy to keep my students involved and talking and engaged with our content? And then our goal, of course, is that we're building skills, and we just want to add more tools over time. So we don't want to throw all of these ideas at them, but we want to consistently use a few strategies where we're really encouraging that active engagement. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And then we're going to, when we're done with our active learning strategies and the discussion surrounding those, we're going to very briefly talk about 2 literacy strategies where students are very actively engaged. So I want to show you models of actual content and how we would actively engage our students. So anticipation reaction guide and vocabulary map, and there's lots of different ways to do both. I'm going to show you one way, but both of these strategies could be a full day long workshop or an afternoon workshop where we work together on creating that using your content. So just know that those are just very brief introductions, Both of those are available. You can, Google them for some different ideas. It doesn't have to be just the way that I'm going to show you, but I've given you templates that you'll be able to actually use those right away. So we're hoping for a really practical workshop today. And let's get right into active learning. And as I'm sharing this definition with you, you're going to be thinking about your answer in red. So what are some current strategies that you're using or that you've recently been taught while teaching virtually or in preparation to go out into the field that you're helping students to stay engaged in the lesson? So be thinking about that answer, because what is active learning? And that means that we're going to be intentional. We are intentionally engaging our students in the content and in the process of responding and engaging in that learning. And I think that when I ask teachers or my students, are you actively engaging your students? And they all say, yes, I am. And then I will go to their classroom and I'm like, oh, we could have done so many more things to make sure that we're doing quick checks on that comprehension of the content and making sure that students are talking more than we are. So students should be actively engaging with the content and with each other. They're going to be unveiling prior ideas. So thinking back on those background experiences that they have, they're going to be making connections between ideas, constructing new knowledge from their experiences, and then examples specifically would be debating ideas, asking questions. So how do you encourage them to ask questions and get more involved in that content and have that safe, comfortable learning environment so they can ask questions? How are they comparing answers to what they already know? How are they considering alternatives and then using that evidence to develop explanations? I just picked up my high school daughter from her very first day of high school. She got to go face-to-face today. And it's so interesting, as I was preparing to do that webinar and then running in the house to, preparing to do this webinar and then running in the house after picking her up and hearing how she was bored during certain classes, right? Because we get in the same mode of doing the same things. So what are some ideas that you have or some current strategies that you've recently been taught, that you've already used, that you've watched modeled for you with helping students to stay engaged? So I don't know if anyone is brave enough to speak up and share an idea that you have or a lesson that you've observed or something you've seen online. Any ideas?
I would like to share what we have been doing with our students, which are younger ones. So what we do Zoom sessions. We use music to engage them in dancing. We take short breaks. We have been using epic books, which are really great. We use reading books. And then we use hands-on if whatever they have it at home, because I have to be a little bit more thoughtful of if they have those things that or not. So if we read book, we ask them to draw something what they like about the book, or if we are making patterns, we do, okay, can you bring spoon and fork from your house and let me make a pattern with the spoon and fork, and more like sharing about the family and how I've been doing. We're using like Jamboard with the Zoom, sometimes Seesaw. So we're trying a lot to, to use different apps and hands-on material while asking questions and sharing ideas and letting them discuss their emotions and share their own opinions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I love that they're able to use the resources that are right there in the home. Yes. I think that is really creative, and I really love that. This has been really challenging, hasn't it? And you are very creative. I love it. Are you,
Thank you.
An intern teacher, or are you?
I'm a student teacher. I'm a preschool teacher, but I'm doing my special ed credentials from Mildmont, and I will be student teaching starting from September 28th, Monday.
Wonderful. That's great. That's just wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
What else is going on? Give me some more ideas and some fun things that you've observed or that you've actually implemented yourself. Anyone else?
I know what I'd like to share real quick. An experience that I do enjoy is to make them realize that, yes, we're not in the classroom, but look we're all here on the screen together in school learning together. So I have them engage with one another instead of myself speaking all the time, just so that they could reach each other through the screen. So do you see your friend? I'll name who it is, and then I'll call 2 or 3 at the same time. And then they realize that they can engage even though we're through the screen. So a lot of because we have to do a lot of ELD type of programs. So you need to speak, and now you go ahead and speak to your friend. So a lot of engagement between one another, and I give them a chance to converse with one another and hear the examples from their peers. So that's something that it takes a little while, but now they're used to it. Now they know they're expected to engage with one another. When I'll tell them, unmute yourselves. Let's 3 of you unmute yourselves and let's hear you with this lesson right now.
Awesome. And what age do you teach?
Right now, I'm resident substitute for, it's a special ed classroom from kinder to 3rd grade.
Awesome. So it's a great way, because even littler kids, I was going to say that junior high and high school, sometimes they can be very bashful, right? So yes. But it is true, right? So you're seeing a difference as they get used to it and they have more of that comfort level for being able to say, hey, I've got some confidence here.
And for the very little ones, when I had kindergarten, I had the stuffed animal right on the screen. Instead of myself saying it, or instead of speaking to a friend, they spoke to Maggie the dog, and there they go. That broke the ice too.
Oh, that's a great idea. I love it. That's great. And that, of course, can be used in the classroom also, face-to-face.
Yes,
that's great.
True.
That's wonderful. I think that I want to avoid doing the Zoom meeting where the teacher goes from the top corner and goes across. And so the first person gets to say answer number 1 and the second person gets to say answer number 2. Because when I'm person number 4, that's the only one I'm focused on, right? And then I'm ignoring all of the other problems because I'm nervous and I want to make sure that my answer is going to be correct when it's my turn to share my answer. I think I like the idea that the kids are more comfortable and that they can feel free to share without being called on, actually, but that they'll be comfortable in your classrooms to share their ideas without it being like so prescribed as far as you're going to be number 4 based on where you are on the screen or based on your first name, first initial or something, but to really create that safe and comfortable classroom. Awesome ideas. Anyone else would you like to share? Okay, I'm staring at my screen instead of all of you, and I sure wish I was staring at all of you. Okay, so let's look at some evidence-based literacy strategies that you can use in an online environment and a virtual environment, and a face-to-face environment, of course. And these are things that you may already know, but they're research-based in that we know for a fact that the more we can get students involved and the more that we can get them actively engaged, the more they're going to know that content. So the first one is a simple one, choral responses. You might remember this. This would be when you're going to ask a question that's going to have one answer. It's not going to have a lot of thinking, but you're just going through answers and having them possibly read off homework responses, that kind of thing. And of course, in a virtual environment, you can use the little thumbs up or the different emojis and different things that are a part of each of the different platforms that are being used. Another one would be actual physical responses. So having them actually put up a number of their level of comfort with the content. So if they put up 5 fingers, I really know it well. 4, they're saying, I can do it alone. I can practice, but I can do this on my own. Number 3 would be, I'm in the middle. I'm going to need some help. Number 2, I'm going to need quite a bit more practice. And number 1, I'm just beginning to understand. So that is a really great way, even when you're face-to-face in a classroom, and students can put their numbers right in front of their chest if they're insecure about how well they know the content. That's another great way for you to just get a gauge on their knowledge level of that particular lesson. Another low-tech way that you could check for comprehension or that content area knowledge would be to have them have just a piece of paper or an index card with a happy face, a straight face, or a sad face, so that you're quickly asking them, how are you feeling right now about this lesson, about exactly what we're talking about the method that I just taught you, and they can quickly pop up how they're feeling. And that can be obviously on a Zoom, or if you're in a face-to-face classroom, they can hold it up right in front of their chest, and you're able to look around really quickly and see what level of support they might need. A speedometer reading, I don't know if you've ever used this one. This is kind of fun for younger kids, maybe 3rd grade and below. They would put their arms flat on another arm, and it would be like, help, I am not comfortable at all with this topic. Or it's like a speedometer that goes back and forth over how fast you're going. So the arm straight up in the air would be, okay, I'm getting this, I'm doing really well. And then all the way over to the other side on the absolute fastest speedometer reading would be, I can actually teach this to a friend. So they feel that confident that they could be a peer tutor to someone who might need that extra support. You all know tell, help, and check. So, and also think, paired, share. I don't think we actually use these as much as what we could. And these could be really, really quick strategies that can be used in a classroom. What about on a Zoom where you have them in a breakout room and you have 2 people working together, and you can also double them up. So you have 4 people sharing ideas. So after a pair has shared their ideas to each other, then they could share to another pair, and those 4 can put their heads together on an answer. And then a mingle think, pair, share would be for more groups to get together and having pairs determine the responses, and then maybe working with another pair and then with a full group, so that they really get the confidence in their knowledge and in being able to speak out in that comfortable classroom environment that you have designed. Numbered heads. So teachers assign specific numbers to students, and then the students work on just that one part of the assignment. And so you might have 6 students working together, and they can be working in a group, and each person is assigned a different piece of the assignment, and they can check each other's work and teach each other that piece of the assignment. So it's a great way to tackle sort of a bigger project, and also encouraging that collaboration and that peer tutoring of a specific subject area, of a section of that subject area. You could also do a wraparound. This is a really fun way to just end a lesson. It gets them involved after they've been working on an activity a little bit, and they can take a turn saying something that they're really going to remember from this lesson, like what stood out to them, or a significant aha, something they really didn't know, or something that really shocked them or surprised them, or something that they learned and that they're really thinking about, or that they want to know more about, or something that wasn't covered at all and they want to learn more about this maybe tomorrow. And that helps you know their level of depth, if they wanted to continue learning that topic, or if you could do a little bit of a better job maybe of letting them go in depth, or even if they wanted to take it in a different direction. And so you can guide some of that by having them quickly whip around and answer one of those questions. There's a lot of different ways you can handle that, but it's a cool way to end a learning pod or a learning section for that day. And then what about written responses? So have them at the end of a lesson, or even in the middle, list 3 reasons why this, or have them list 2 examples or 1 prediction. And they can work on this with a partner or in a small group as well, or individually, whatever you have time for or whatever seems appropriate for that particular lesson. Today I learned this, tomorrow I'm going to need to know this. Or today I would color today as this because, and that's kind of fun. It kind of gets the mood and the vibe of the lesson, and it will give you some additional information on how that day went or how that lesson went. I hope we blank next. I'm really interested in doing this next. And it really gives some time for them to share with you that level of engagement. And I really like to hear from the students so I know what they need to know more about or what they're desiring as we continue on with that topic. Or 1 word I would describe today as, and then have them say whatever that word is that pops into their head. So if they're telling you today was overwhelming, today was long, like my niece said, figure out on your end, how can we have that not feel not as overwhelming or not so long tomorrow? What could we do a little bit differently? Or for even younger kids, what type of animal did they feel like today and why? And that helps them to kind of maybe characterize a little bit differently the way that they felt how the day went or that lesson went. So as you look back over these 7 different strategies, kind of the responses, just getting them involved in actually speaking out, and so that you can check that comprehension, and then getting them to talk with one another and work together in groups, and then also sharing some different things that they thought about the lesson or what they learned. How do you think you could use this, or which one of these would you like to implement right away into your teaching next week as you start student teaching, or if you're already in a classroom now, which one do you think would be the easiest, or which one do you already use? What are some of your thoughts?
I like that speedometer. That's something new for me, and I would like to do this with the younger kids, so they don't have to use their words. Sometimes, you know, they have difficulty, or they don't want to use words, so it's better to use, you know, signals and let them know, let us know what if they get the idea or not, and wrap around too that, you know, before leaving the classroom or before ending the lesson, they can share what they learned from that day, or what's their favorite part of the lesson.
Awesome. Do you find when you use that you have to control like 1 or 2 kids that talk too much? Or do you think, is there a way, do you frame it so that they can share those thoughts, but have it be maybe a little bit more brief so that they hear each other, but that it doesn't go on and on? Have you found that that might be an issue with any of your students?
With the wraparound?
Uh-huh.
No, they love, as of right now with the Zoom, they love to talk with each other. So I think it's really nice for them to see other students and then share what they learned, or what is their favorite part of the lesson, or anything what's going on in their life at that time. It's really helped them to build relationship with their peers, since they're not in the physical situation in the classroom.
I love it. That's great. Yes. And that's going to help them a lot socially too, to feel like we're not as connected right now. It's such a difficult time, and we want them to feel that connection and being able to learn how to listen to one another and also share. So like those reciprocity skills of friendship, that's great. I'm so happy to hear that's working well for you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to share one way you could, which one do you like, or which one have you used, or?
If I could just jump in, I love how all of these really will help to pull all of the kids into participating and active engagement, even those quieter, you know, shy kids. These are all ways that like just everyone can participate, so it's not just a handful of students doing all the participating. And then I also love how they really pack a punch, because they serve as sort of an informal assessment for the teacher to gauge where the kids are at, not only with the lesson, but also just kind of how they're feeling in general. So I thought that was really cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think that the goal here, again, I'm really, really big on this classroom environment and not making it a stressful place for kids so they hate coming to school or they feel so nervous to go to your class. And I'm dealing with that right now with my high schooler, and I dealt with it myself, and I bet that all of you did too. At some point, you can remember a teacher that made things stressful for you. So think about how that made you feel, why you felt that way, and what we can do to control those feelings in the way that we teach to our own students. So if we have students that already have experienced some failure and they're in classrooms and they know that they struggle in certain areas, these are great ways to get them involved and to feel safe in your classroom, that all of these answers, they have an opportunity with many of them to share with one another and really kind of build that confidence. It's really, really important to me, that overall classroom environment. Okay, any other comments on this first 7 strategies? We're gonna do 21, I think. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so metacognitive markers. I don't know if any of you guys have used these. I used to love these when I was teaching middle school and high school especially. have them put a little star by something that they already knew. So we're building that confidence level about something they already knew. And obviously they can do this in an online environment on an iPad, or they can put a $sign. Hey, I just gained something new, an aha moment. This is brand new learning for me. So I'm going to get a little bit of the $sign feeling that I gained some money in this game. And then an exclamation point. So I had an emotional response to this. When we were reading this story, this made me feel really happy or really sad or really embarrassed for the main character, but it really gave me this emotional feeling. And then a question mark that they had an unanswered question. So you were reading a text or reading a story, and there was still something that I needed to know, or I needed to ask a friend or ask a teacher. So they can do these in pairs, but I love having them actually get involved with the text. So that's one way to do it. There's lots of different ideas out there. Also, at the end of a lesson or the end of just a time period of teaching, have them write a 10-word summary. Okay, you guys, let's stop what we're doing right now. Just write down 10 words that you remember from the lesson, or have them put together a sentence or two that summarized what they just learned. And this isn't going to be graded, and we're not worried about spelling and grammar and all of that, but just having them stop really quickly and think about what we just talked about, so that if we have some minds wandering, or if they weren't involved in the conversation or with their collaboration, if they can just put that down really quickly into their technology tool, or just on paper as well. And the same thing with a 2-minute paper where, okay, you guys, we have 2 minutes. Let's just write down everything you can remember from the lesson, or everything that you just discussed with your partner, or have them, if they're not able to write, even to draw a picture of it, or to find a picture online that would summarize what was just discussed or what was just taught. So many things you can do with that. Also, I know Jamboard was mentioned earlier, which is great for a graffiti wall. I love this idea when you're teaching, is just have a huge wall where students can go in and write down what they just learned, or what they want to remember, something that was surprising, and you just create this active representation of that topic or that content area, and it can be revisited. So I put just some ideas there. Same thing with rotation reflection. You can use Padlet for that as well. When you go back teaching face-to-face, it's great to get the kids up and down, and you can do this when you're virtually teaching too, so that they have those breaks. But having them go from topic to topic and put their ideas down, and just continue to be involved in that lesson. And then obviously, you know about graphic organizers, concept maps. There are so many different tools online that I wanted to just make sure you don't forget that tool. I think that that really helps students to focus their learning, and there's so many. When I do this presentation face-to-face, people have so many different ones that they use. So that will be fun eventually when you have Dr. Rao for 482A and our 482B class, and all these different wonderful content area classes that we have that shares a lot of these ideas. Also, how about an opening question for the day? So you start as the teacher with a focused question, and you get them really focused on what we're going to be learning today. And this is a question we're going to be able to answer by the end of our time period together today. So with these additional 7 strategies, is there one that floats your boat that you think, hey, this is new to me, or one I've used? Does anybody want to share anything about any of these new 7 strategies?
I would definitely like to use metacognitive markers when I will be going to student teaching, because I think it will help me assess the students' background knowledge of the subject. And we'll of course use the 10-word summary. I really like that idea because it's short and it's fast. And maybe if I could do it in a small group, so if they can learn from each other to get their own summary.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. I like those too. Anyone else have one that you might want to try or that you have used?
I've used graphic organizers in the past, as well as the graffiti wall. When using the graffiti wall, you really got to make sure that you've designated a color to the group, so that way if there's issues, you can address that with the group. Hopefully you don't have any, but it gets them up, it gets them moving, it gets them talking to their partners, and it gets them on task, and it really keeps them on task as well. The graphic organizer is huge in terms of getting a lot of information down and simplifying it for them, simplifying complex terms and things like that. So I've really used them, and the kids really enjoy them as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And that was a good warning about the graffiti wall too. You got to be careful with that for sure. I've actually heard even some issues when we do our, prepare our kids, and the teacher can't be in every single breakout room. So I've heard that there can be some issues, but that's the same thing in a classroom, right? You can't hear what every single group is discussing, so all of those things are good that we set up those parameters of expectations for the graffiti walls, for our partner pair share, all of that. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. Anyone else? Okay, we'll go on to a few more that we have, and then we'll move on to our active engagement literacy strategies. So obviously Brainstorm, there's a couple of different cool tools that you can use for helping students to brainstorm, but as crazy as this sounds, because I feel like I grew up with brainstorming and graphic organizers, I don't know if you guys agree, but it seems like we always brainstormed. I don't see teachers use that as much. So as simple as it is, we know it, but it's a great way to get them focused, and maybe they won't be as distracted by petting their cat or whatever they're doing, and have them brainstorm before you teach a lesson. Also post-it questions. So a lot of times in classrooms now, we have them save their questions, write down their question. You can use Padlet for that or Jamboard. Have them write their questions so that you're always seeing and you're able to do that assessment informally of where they are and what questions they might have. Question and answer pairs. I love this one. I use this all the time when I was teaching, is having them design some challenging questions for their groups. So as a homework assignment, after you've done a lesson, they get to sort of create a little quiz for the group, and they get to see if they can challenge their peers. And also that would give them a little way of quizzing each other before a test. So that's a really easy one. It gets them involved. And then one last question. So if you have a focused question at the beginning, and then you can end it with that one last question. So this is the actual crux of the lesson. This is the one thing I wanted you to know. And so you end your lesson and ask them that one last question, and students will answer it. You can have them do, a think, write, pair, share, where they're able to write that down, and that'll be really easy for you to see who got the lesson. And it's really kind of a quick way, but making sure that they're still involved. So you don't just end the lesson, okay, this is your homework for today or whatever, is to try to see if they're able to answer that one last question. And then rose, thorn, bud. So the rose is having them share something that's positive right now, something they really get in the lesson, or a thorn, something that's challenging them or something that's hard for them right now. Or the bud is sharing something that they're really looking forward to, or that's giving them hope about the lesson, something they can't wait to learn. So you can have them think of the rose, the thorn, or the bud. And it's kind of a good way to focus them, and it gives you a quick way of seeing what was easy for them, and then maybe what was also challenging for them. Then the gimme 5. So say 5 things that you know right now from this lesson, or 5 things that you've seen other members of the class do well, or maybe 5 questions you have, or 5 things you want to improve upon by the time this unit is complete. Or zip it down. So divide the class into groups, and then have each group reduce the lesson to either an acronym, a song, a poem, a play, a short phrase, an alliteration, something. So you have them work in groups and they're actually just summarizing together in a creative way something about that lesson. So it kind of makes it fun. And then if there was somebody that sort of missed out on a piece, because they're working in a group, they're able to really discuss together what the key learning would be from that lesson. So let's look at these last 7 strategies. So brainstorming the post-it question and answer pairs, one last question, rose, thorn, bud, gimme 5, or zip it down. Which one might you be able to use immediately? Does anyone have one you like or that you could implement or that you have implemented?
I would definitely try the zip it down because it gives chance to all the students to show their understanding in different ways. They can role play, they can create a song. It's being creative, not just one way of sharing. So I would definitely use that one.
Awesome, thank you.
I can see the
Sounds
rose
like you were doing
thorn.
that already.
I can see the rose thorn bud.
Sorry,
That'll be the rose thorn bud. That's a concept that I'd like to use because how it starts with a positive note. That's definitely worth using right away. And then how it moves them on to challenge, think, and it offers critical thinking, and then shares something that they're looking for. That looks to see what they have ahead. So I like the whole mindset that it gives them.
Yes, awesome. It kind of forces them to think like, wait a minute, what could be after this lesson as well, you know?
Right.
So thank you for sharing, I appreciate it. Anyone else have one?
I like to use the one last question because it's kind of like an exit ticket and it shows me whether or not they've learned the concept, whether or not I was successful in teaching it. Because if they score really low, then it tells me I need to go back and reteach the next day.
Awesome, absolutely. It really helps you to know exactly like, okay, this was a success, or oh man, we got to reteach. Yeah, awesome. Anyone else have a comment on any of those or any that we've discussed? Okay, so I've also included some other resources for active engagement and virtual teaching. And if you're on Facebook, there is a really cool site that is run by a Placentia Yorba Linda expert teacher. And I follow Empower Ed Venture. I don't know if any of you follow her as well, but every single day there is such great commentary and people are engaging with each other in things that worked and things that didn't work. And so it might be kind of fun if you're on Facebook to add that. And it's from teachers now all over the United States and sharing a lot of really good virtual ideas. So I wanted to point that out. It's kind of, it seems a little odd to recommend a Facebook thing, but it's a really cool group and I've enjoyed following them. Okay. So let's get into our literacy strategies because I don't want to run out of time here. But I wanted to first show you anticipation reaction guide. And I don't know, have any of you ever used an anticipation reaction guide with your students? Okay, so it might be something pretty new, but what we're trying to do is we want to activate their background knowledge before they read a passage. We want to help them identify textual evidence during the reading. So where's the proof that this statement is true or false? And then we want to have them critically think. We want to help them evaluate their own perspectives as well as the author's perspectives after doing the reading. So before reading, they're going to identify their personal perspectives about the statements. And during the reading, they're going to read it. They're going to document where they found the actual evidence on which page. And then they're going to think about that statement by using multiple perspectives. And then after reading, they're going to determine whether what they actually read changed their perspective or kept it the same, or how did their background knowledge and their experiences change based on that particular reading? So let me show you what an anticipation reaction guide looks like. It's really simple, and this can be modified however you want, however it would be appropriate for your students based on age. But I'm going to show you an example of this, but this is the blank template that you could use. So whatever the title of that passage is and the author, so the students would write that at the top. And then there is a statement that you are going to create. So you're going to come up with a couple of statements about that actual text. And students are going to read the statement and they're going to agree or disagree. And they're going to write then their perspective before they actually read the passage. So why did they agree? Why did they disagree? And then they're going to list what they read. So just some very quick words or even a picture of what they read that supported that statement and the page number they found it on, just to help keep them focused. And then if their perspective changed after doing the reading. So let me show you an example. So this was a science text, and this was on tropical rainforests. So here are some examples. It is regrettable that animals lose their homes when we cut down trees to mine natural resources. However, it's more important that we obtain those natural resources to make the things we want and need to live. So you can see that students can agree or disagree, and it's completely okay for their answers to be different, right? And they're gonna list their reasons about why they thought that way. What was their perspective before reading? Why? Maybe they saw a TV show, or maybe they read another science book that helped them to think this way, or maybe their parents really have an opinion on this and they've listened to their parents a lot. So they're going to list their perspective, then they're going to list their, as they read, so they'll read the passage with you or with a partner or however you're going to be doing that actual lesson, and they're going to list exactly what they read and what page number it's on. So the text is going to support that statement or not. And the reasons will be, they'll be able to find them in the text and they'll list them there. And then they may change their perspective or it may stay the same. So they may be able to say, hey, I learned this. I didn't know this. This was really new to me, or I really didn't know a lot about this. So this is obviously an example that would be more for middle school or even high school. So you would have to adapt this if you're going to be teaching younger kids. So here's another example. It's better to eat food that is grown close to your town than to buy bananas that are grown in South America. So they can agree, disagree, and then they're going to put why. Their initial response was to agree or disagree. Then they read the passage with you, with a partner by themselves. They'll list why, what the text says about that particular statement, the page number, and then if their perspective changed. So one thing is that you're encouraging them to have their own opinion and to be able to speak to their own perspective, but then also to look at evidence and determine whether that's going to change their perspective or not and why. Here's another example. Because renewable resources like food, sunlight, and water will replenish themselves, we can use as much as we want. So that's another really interesting one for them to think about. And they're going to agree or disagree. They're going to write why they put agree or disagree. Then they will put the textual evidence and the page or the source number, and then if their perspectives changed and why. So those are some good examples. I'm wondering, have any of you, so you said before nobody really responded because maybe you haven't used this, but now that you've seen it, have you used something similar? And if so, maybe share about that, or also share if you think this is a good way to get students actually engaged in the text and thinking for themselves. So what are your thoughts about how you could use this strategy, or if you've used it? Do you think it would be possible to use it with your students? It's not too much work. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
It is possible. I have seen where it's mostly because they're engaging with the text. You're right about that. They're looking for the source, and it's something that they can apply as in high school. They could use this, learn to use it. We guide them in the younger grades, but as they get to the junior high level, they've already been exposed to it. They'll carry this on even through college. Everything that we have to text. We have to use source pages and know your perspective, and it's all about critical thinking too. Leads to critical thinking. Well, why is it that you agree? Why is it that you disagree? So I see it applied in different levels of guiding them through it, but it can be applied at all grades, all levels.
Mm-hmm. And it's not too much work, I think, for the teacher, because basically you're able to just pull a couple things from a text, and then it really does get them involved. They really are forced to think, right? And to make a confident response, and it's okay for their perspective to change. And I think that that's, again, that safe environment that we're developing for our kids so that they don't feel like they can't be wrong, you know? So it's okay if they have a different perspective than their neighbor. And it's okay if that perspective changes based on that evidence that they've just found. And this is a great thing to encourage those opportunities to talk in small groups about their perspectives. And it's a really great way to keep them involved in the lesson. Any other thoughts on the anticipation reaction guide? I usually, when I do a workshop using different literacy strategies, I love to give people different texts and have them put together some statements and get that practice. But obviously, we're just going to try to share a couple of good strategies with you today and give you that chance to practice on your own, I guess. And then one last just quick example, all paper products negatively affect the environment. So you can see that these types of statements can go either way, that people really have to decide what they agree with or disagree. Anything else on anticipation reaction guide? Any questions about this for use or?
I would just add that you can also use it where the kids go to one side or the other side of the classroom based on if they agree or disagree with the statement, because it gives them a visual representation as well. And you can also, as a teacher, call out some of the students to share why they stood on that side of the class in terms of their response.
Love it. Absolutely.
So it's been pretty helpful.
And it gets them up and moving, and yeah, love it. That's great. Thank you for sharing. Anything else? Okay, we'll move on to vocabulary maps. So, okay, so there are lots of different ways to do vocabulary maps. But here is one example, and this can be pretty much teacher created, but student with heavy student help. So you are determining what is that big idea that you want kids to be focused on. So maybe you're teaching a unit on the Holocaust and you want them to learn a piece of kind of the overarching theme of what you're going to be talking about. They're going to be reading a book about that. And so you're going to put the vocabulary or the concept on the line. And then if there's a similar word that students might know in another language or the cognate, it could be put there if that's appropriate. And then what's a definition and that you would think the students would understand? Not something they're going to look up in the dictionary, but something that would have a really quick way to describe that term. And then a picture or a visual representation would be right here in the square. Then you would work next on synonyms for that word, 1 or 2 sentences using the word, and then you'll have 2 sentences that will encourage the students to turn and talk related to that word. So let's look at an example that I created that again is a middle school example or kind of a secondary example, but it can be definitely adapted. So civil liberties, and what would be a student-friendly definition would be freedoms like the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the right to privacy, the right to defend yourself, and the right to a fair trial. So some of that might be too much for middle school. But you could say civil liberties are freedoms, and it could be as simple as that. Then a picture of people having the right to peacefully protest and share. Then 1 to 2 sentence using the word. So these are some sentences that I created, and you could have students write down those sentences. Oops, I skipped synonyms. Sorry about that. So come up with a synonym, have the students work in groups and think of the synonyms, have them think of sentences that they would to use that word, and then think about some questions that you would have them so that they critically think about that word. So share with a partner a freedom that you value and have them work in small groups about that exact word. So civil liberty, or discuss some civil liberties that have been taken away from people you know or that you have seen on TV. So they're going to share something they value related to that word and then something that's been taken away. So here is just an example of a vocabulary map. There's so many different ones, but I actually really like this one because I think that it gets them engaged in what's a definition that's really simple for that overall word or theme or vocabulary word for that unit, the picture, synonyms, sentences, and then turn and talk to each other. So they're asking specific questions of each other to get them involved in using that word and being able to describe related pieces of that word. So what questions do you have for me on this vocabulary map, or do you have an adapted version that you have used that you might want to describe and share with us? Do you think you could use this one as you teach? It gives them a good opportunity to get actively engaged with one specific word and think of ways that they would actually apply that word and use it, and then talk with each other about that word. So it's really enhancing that reading comprehension for our students.
Yeah, I love this one. I talk about in 482A, we just talked about this week actually, that our students in our classes in special education often need to hear and use and apply a new vocabulary word 7 to 11 times before it is in their long-term memory. So this really just gives them a lot of practice with that word, kind of extended practice that they really need.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Rao. Okay, well, we're kind of getting close to our time here, and I definitely don't want to keep you over, but I really want to encourage you to create that safe and welcoming classroom so that kids can be more and more engaged with the content, and they feel safe even if their answers are wrong, or even if they shared something that was a little bit different from somebody else's. So I love this. I have come to a frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated and a child humanized or dehumanized. So I leave you with that. And actually, I'm not going to leave you. I will stay on as long as you need me to. If you have comments, questions, or if you just want to share anything with us. But if you need to go, because our time is just about up.
Although hold on, not just yet, because I have a survey, but keep going.
Oh, that's right. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Rao, and then I'll hang around. If anybody wants to share any last ideas or ask questions, I'm here for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Pierson. That was just so full of so many great ideas that teachers could put into practice tomorrow with very little prep, and they're just so simple yet really impactful and effective, which is my favorite kind of teaching strategy. So thank you so much for that awesome webinar. So a couple of things, everyone. I want to ask if, first I posted the file that Dr. Pierson has been working off of. I posted it a couple of times in the beginning of the webinar. So if you would like to save that, go right ahead if you haven't already. And then I would like to ask, please, please, pretty please, if you would click on the Qualtrics survey that I just added to the chat. And I'm going to give you time to do that now. We need this survey completed, if you don't mind. It is tied to the funding, and we want to keep getting funded so that we can keep offering these free webinars to all of you. So if you could please, it'll just take 2 minutes. Go to that survey right now and go ahead, and you can keep your Zoom open and ask questions or listen to questions as you go. But if you could just fill out that quick survey, we would so appreciate that so much. It's going to ask you the name of this webinar. The name, I'm going to type it in. It was Active Engagement for the Literacy Rich Classroom. So I just typed that into the chat if you want to copy and paste that. And then when you come back, I'll just wait a couple of minutes, and when you come back, I'm going to share with you the next live webinar that you can register for. So we'll just wait for a couple minutes, and then I'll share that with you. Thanks, you guys. Okay, if you are still completing that survey, thank you so much. I will also add it into the chat. I'm just going to let you know the next live webinar. We will also have several pre-recorded webinars posted very soon by Dr. Pierson. There will be some from myself as well as a couple of our other faculty. But our next live webinar is in about a month. It's going to be with Dr. Pierson again on Wednesday, October 21st, same time, 4 to 5 p.m. And the topic for that is Make Learning Fun, Ideas for Virtual Learning. And then we'll have another live webinar in November and another one in December. So I'll type that date up, but since you registered for this one, you will get an email about the future ones as well in case you're interested in registering for those. So thanks again so much for joining us. And if anyone has any further questions, Dr. Pierson's still here. Please feel free to ask.
Okay, I think we're at time, and I don't hear any questions, and people are dropping off. So I think that Dr. Rao and I will end the meeting, but feel free to email me at any time if you have any questions or if you have any comments about today's webinar. I'd love to continue our conversation. Have a good night, everyone.